Well, hello, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and our next trolley stop is now. Welcome back to another all-new episode of PR from the Heart's Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. To be precise, we have reached episode number 59. That is the 59th trolley stop here at PR from the Heart, here at the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. My name is John Masiulionis, the manager of PR from the Heart, the co-host of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, and the author of the new award-winning children's book, Walking Each Other Home, Zachary's Mission, a hospice for children, published by our friends and neighbors at Trolley Stop Publishing. A portion of all proceeds of Walking Each Other Home helps me to bring my vision and my dream of a children's hospice to form and shape right here in San Diego, California. Joined, as always, each and every trolley stop by my faithful furry friend and forever companion, Little Forrest, who reminds me that he is not only just my faithful furry friend and forever companion in this magical journey that we call life, but he is my co-host on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. And of course, joining us as well each and every trolley stop, you know him and you love him as the beloved Mr. McFeely on the long-running popular children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We know him and we love him as David Newell. David, we are actually launching this bookcast, episode number 59, into the world at a very special time. Normally, for all of our traditional and regular friends and neighbors and listeners and viewers and shining stars, we premiere episodes of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast normally between the middle of the month towards the end of the month. But we're celebrating National Read Across America Week. Of course, when we celebrate National Read Across America Day, that honors the life, the legacy, the memory of the late Dr. Suess. National Read Across America is the time each and every year where we really place the spotlight on more of a collective level across the country on reading and the benefits of reading, our children reading, parents reading to their kids, and really celebrating all things reading. So why not release episode number 59 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, a special 3-book bookcast at that. So David, happy National Read Across America Week to you, good sir.
Thank you. And we have 3 books to celebrate that with, and it begins March 1st, right? Is that correct?
Technically, yes. Read Across America Week begins technically on March the 2nd, which is National Read Across America Day.
Okay.
The whole week is actually National Read Across America Week. But why not make every day National Read Across America Day?
No, I agree. The importance of books can't be stressed enough, I think, in the days of these days of video and games. I think books are so important to stress, and that's why we do this little bookcast. And as we mentioned often, we are not here to critique them. We're here to tell people what's available. It's Correct. A big difference, I think. Just tell them what the story's about and go on from there.
And it's interesting how, before we start, one of the things that, of course, we do in our own way is to keep the memory of Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, alive and well, while also inspiring and empowering the next generation. These amazing authors whose books that we feature on the program, they are blazing their own trail. And if you go back to your time being friends and colleagues with Fred, there's so many different connections just with the world of reading. Number one, when I had the chance, a shout out to our friends and neighbors at the Fred Rogers Institute in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, when I was doing research on Fred for my children's book, Walking Each Other Home, Zachary's Mission, a hospice for children. And I asked, could you give me as much information as you could about Fred and the way in which he connected and communicated to children, parents, and families about death, grief, and loss? I also asked them, could you share with me Fred's connection to reading and just some of the things that he did? And I learned that Fred Rogers was one of the keynote speakers at the American Library Association's annual conference and exhibition. He did, I believe, a talk with ALA in the very early 90s. Of course, we remember different episodes of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood where Fred had the opportunity to connect, and, your team had the opportunity to connect with the late Eric Carle, of course, who was such an influential force and bright light in the world of children's literature. Who could forget where when two worlds converged and collided, when you had LeVar Burton, of course, the host of Rainbow, collide in a loving way, not collide in a negative way, but join forces with Fred. And so it was just in different ways, shapes, and forms he encouraged, he reminded kids about the importance of reading and making reading fun and making reading enjoyable and bringing people together. Fred had a really beautiful way about sharing all of that as well, too. So again, in our own way, we're doing our part to keep Fred's memory and legacy alive through the Neighborly Reviews bookcast. Before we begin and before we talk about these three books that we're going to be sharing, just really, what was it like seeing Fred in action when he was talking about reading? He obviously was very passionate about different subjects, whether it be, the harsh and difficult things that we experience in life, like he didn't shy away from grief and loss and death and divorce. But reading was something that really was very special to him in many ways. Was it not, David?
Oh, it was. In fact, when we would go on various trips and he would, or out to shoot something, we had to stay in a city overnight, he would go directly to the local bookstore and spend an hour going through what was new books, and he'd eventually buy something. He was very, I think he liked reading more than anything else. And I can understand that too. It's a very solitude. You're by yourself. And Fred was a very private person, but he also was such a warm person. And he would talk about some of the books that he read with people. But I think he had two passions. One was reading. The other was swimming. And he swam every day for an hour. As he was very disciplined. He'd make sure he'd get his swim in. And then I think we would tape programs, and that got him through the day. He'd go home and rest, and he'd always read. But he got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and he would read mail, and then he'd read a passage in the Bible. He would do that every day, and that was Fred, and that was his rejuvenation, I guess you could say, every day, swimming and reading. And then we're going to talk about some reading that people can get a book out of their library or out of their bookstore.
That is where we will find award-winning educator and children's author and one of the newest members of the PR from the Hart family, Julia Koloch. And she has birthed into the world her brand new children's book, The Adventures of Mrs. Crockess and Ivy, No Pockets, No Problem, published by Miriam Laundrie. And a shout out to Miriam Laundrie and her incredible team for bringing such great books into the world as well, too. We've had the good fortune of representing and working with many of Miriam's authors over the years. So, David, let us start at the top, the forefront, and the onset. The first book in the March 2026 episode of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast, episode number 59 to be precise, celebrating National Read Across America, not only Day, but National Read Across America Week. The Adventures of Mrs. Crockess and Ivy, No Pockets, No Problem.
Well, this is a very special story written by Julia. And, she said that she is a proud dog mom. And her bio says she has a collection of over 2,000 picture books, which serve as her inspiration for adventures as an author. She also said that the story, No Pockets, No Problem, comes from her 3-year-old niece, as well as Julia's own quirky sense of humor. She imagines her dog/children as humans, and Crockess is a dog in the story. So, and the book begins by introducing the reader to Mrs. Crockess, and that's a beagle-like dog. Well, the Briggs family adored Mrs. Crockess the moment they brought her home. But Ivy Briggs, she's the daughter in the family, loved Mrs. Crockess the most. They spent their days drinking slushies, picking flowers, and playing cards, and playing music on their instruments. Well, one day as they were practicing, something happened. Ivy's guitar string broke. And Mrs. Crockess was upset because they couldn't play music. Uh, Mrs. Crockess, by the way, was on the drums. And they decided to buy a new string at the music store. And Mrs. Crockess was concerned because she didn't have pockets to carry keys, money, her phone, her map, and her bone, plus some lip balm. Ivy decided to carry everything in her pockets, but the dress pockets on the dress on her dress had pockets, but they ripped and everything fell out. But no pockets, no problems. Ivy had an idea. They ran downstairs and they pulled on the storage closet door, and out came everything. But she found her purse amidst all the rubble, and she put Mrs. Crockess's money, keys, phones, map, bone, and some lip balm into her purse. We better go. It's getting late. The store will be closed. They ran out of the house and into the car. Buckle up, said Mrs. Crockess. Down the road, around the roundabout, and over the bridge, Mrs. Crockess was driving. She turned to the right, she turned to the left, honked and signaled, and finally they came into the front of the shop, pulled up to the front of the shop, but as what would you expect happens next? The shop was closed. Well, Mrs. Crockess looked at Ivy's string and said, I have an idea. She whined at the window, barked and scratched, and with all the noise they made, the shop owner opened the door, and he was almost ready to leave, but he noticed that Ivy could use a new string for her guitar. The shop owner fixed the guitar, and Ivy was delighted, paid for the new string, and back to the car. And they hurried home, drove over the bridge, by the park, around the roundabout, and into their driveway. They immediately began to play. Ivy strummed on her repaired guitar, and Mrs. Crockess was on the drums. And they played all through the night, playing music for family and friends. Now, on the last page, the illustration shows Mrs. Crockess and Ivy, plus other musician friends, singing this song. You love me and I love you. There's no problem we can't get through. No pockets, no problem. And that is the end of the book.
It's such a super fun story, David, and thank you for sharing the neighborly review, which we're continuing on now for Julia Coloch's The Adventures of Mrs. Crockess and Ivy. No pockets, no problem. There are several takeaways from the story that I really love. First things first, I mean, you obviously know Little Forrest has been with me for close to 3.5 years now. You know, Forrest is sending his love to everyone. He's just kind of just chilling right now on my lap as we speak. But I mean, come on, a talking dog. You find right at the very beginning of the story, it's not only a special story, it's a very special pup as well, too, right? And I do believe that all of our dogs talk to us, right? It's just a matter of if we choose to hear them or not. So we have this regular dialogue that we're hearing between Ivy Briggs, to be precise, between Ivy and Mrs. Crockess, and they're best friends. They do everything together, as you said, just, you know, drinking slushies and picking daisies and playing cards. Again, very different kinds of things, right? You know, not just going for walks, right? Drinking slushies, playing cards, etc., rocking out to their favorite songs. But one of the main reasons why I really love the story is it's a very connective story for kids. Things where when you read to kids and you can keep them very engaged and very animated. When the guitar string snapped, you see one of the earliest pages in the story, snap, ting. So so when you actually share that part of the story, the kids who are listening and reading the story can hear the fact that, oh no, like the guitar string broke, right? So again, kids are a part of the action. So when there's more exclamation that's given to certain parts of the story, kids can really pay attention. And again, you also mentioned during the story how, Mrs. Crockess carries a lot of stuff when there's money and keys and phone and map and a bone and lip balm and so many other things, right? So again, it's a matter of you got to have pockets to carry all of that stuff. And leave it to little Forrest. When I spend time with him, I always have to carry his stuff. He doesn't have any pockets in any way, shape, or form. But again, we see the curiosity, we see the problem-solving skills of Ivy really jump into action. And even despite the different sorts of challenges, she's very resilient. We don't necessarily see Ivy saying, you know what, I'm going to throw in the towel. This isn't working. You see that continued persistence and resilience. So even in the midst of this super fun story, one of the great things about a wonderful children's book is when they have those redeeming qualities, the redeeming messages. So Julie is teaching kids about problem solving and resilience. And let's be honest, David, in life, we always want life to be like rainbows and gumdrops. We want things to flow out well all the time. But sometimes in life, we can experience some challenges and some frustrations along the way. And it's a matter of how can we adapt? How can we, transform ourselves into the best versions of ourselves? And then we get to the very end of the story. And this really, one of the things that I think is really one of the best takeaways of the story is persistence pays off. So when you take the time and you might be struggling, you might, whether you're a little one or a big kid, right? If you're a mom or a dad, or if you're an entrepreneur, and let's say you find yourself in the midst of a challenging season of your life, this story is reminding you that eventually you take the time, you keep showing up, you keep doing the work, you keep trying different things, you always believe in yourself along the way, right? And then eventually you get to the point where you have the successful restringing of the guitar, so to speak, and you can substitute the replacing of the strings in the guitar with whatever the thing is that you're wanting to get accomplished or to solve as well too. And again, just so many different experiences within the experience. Like you see how they're at home and then they're moving through these challenges. And then at the very end, I will say the shop owner of the music store, he kind of bears a striking resemblance to the late George Carlin, except if George Carlin had a little beard. So for those who love great comedy and are of a certain age, you may remember who the late George Carlin is. If not, look him up. One of the best comedians of all time. But you see again at the very end, there's that exclamation, Yahoo! Right? And you see that all in capital letters. And the story has happy ending. And yes, at the very end, kids can rock along to the song. And it's interesting because the song has a certain tempo, a certain melody resonance. There was the Barney the Purple Dinosaur. And of course, Barney was on PBS even around the time when Mr. Rogers was on the air. And there was the song, I love you, you love me, we're a happy family. So you love me and I love you. There's no problem we can't get. So it's got a little, maybe this is just my own 2 cents, so to speak, right? But I automatically thought of Barney the Purple Dinosaur.
No, I did too.
I was already past a certain age at that point. But again, such a great story. If you love music as well too, it's a story you can relate to. Like, let's say you're teaching your little one how to play the guitar, and all of a sudden, pa-ting, the string breaks. There's so many different takeaways from this story, and especially the fact that Julie really is a literary connoisseur. She has, as you mentioned, I believe, over 2,000 books. So she, over years and years and years, she built her collection to the point where she's like, you know what? I've read so many books. I've seen so many books. I've talked about so many books. Why not bring my own to form and shape? So we encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Julia's official website, which we've included in the description below as well, too. You can head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore, and ask for your copy of The Adventures of Mrs. Crockess and Ivy. No pockets, no problem. And of course, if they do not stock their copies, make that kind recommendation. Let them know that you heard about it right here on the Neighborly Reviews bookcast as well. If Amazon.com is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, be sure to leave that 5-star review for The Adventures of Mrs. Crockess and Ivy. No pockets, no problem. And of course, that lets Julia know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books. And also for all educators, teachers, principals, librarians, school superintendents, you can book your author school visit with Julia for the 2026 school year and beyond by heading on over to her official website. Also want to give a shout out to her illustrator, Petros, who, my last name is Masiulionis. A lot of people think that my last name is Greek. Needless to say, Petros, I believe he has a Greek last name. But anytime that you have a really amazing children's book, if you can have a great symbiotic relationship with an illustrator who helps to bring the story into life, shout out to Petros as well, because it's long since been said, David, that if you don't have the illustrations in a children's book, it's just a pamphlet. It's just words on paper, so to speak. But so many great takeaways from this story as well, too. You agree?
Well, I agree. And I think the whole story is persistence, too. The persistence of what she was determined to get her music done and their little concert done. And I saw persistence in it, too, just keeping at something you want to do, which is a good lesson. They could have said, oh, well, let's just go ride our bikes or something. But no, she wanted to get that string, and she did. So I took that away from it. And I like that message to children, if you want to do something, you do it. And the follow through, I thought was important.
And
so I like that.
And that also reminds me, but before we shift gears to our next book, if one of my favorite quotes from Fred Rogers, and he sang a song about it, was, "You've got to do it."
Do it. Mm-hmm.
Right? So again, giving Julie a lot of credit. She had 2,000 children's books that she amassed a collection of. She eventually did it. She brought her story to form and to shape as well, too. And again, if you're moving through whatever the challenge may be, right, knowing the fact that to maybe take a word out from Fred, instead of saying you've got to do it, you can also say you can get through it. Yeah. Through it as well, too. So those are really good bookends. You can do it, and you can get through it in the process. So again, shout out to Julia. Had the opportunities to spend some time with her and her husband recently, celebrating Julia's birthday at the Kidlit TV studios in New York City. So of course, also shout out to Julie Gribble, to Rocco Stano, to our friends and neighbors at Kidlit TV. Stay tuned, stay connected to PR from the Heart and to Kidlit TV as Julia's featured in-studio read out loud episode of The Adventures of Mrs. Crockess and Ivy, No Pockets, No Problem, will be premiering during the back-to-school season.